Today for Predictions versus Reality, we continue in the AFC North talking about a team that despite making the playoffs, were still one of the most disappointing teams in 2024, the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to talk about where I had them in August, what happened with their season, what went right, and then what went wrong with their year, and then we're going to talk about how they can get better for 2025. Before we begin officially, all right, and welcome in everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic, fantabulous, awesome freaking day. My name is Garrett Shumake, and you are listening to the Shumake Take. Welcome in to Predictions versus Reality, everybody. The offseason series continues here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. This team was a very interesting bunch to follow as the year went on. I was so high on this team at some point during the year, the middle point of the year, that thinking about it now after everything that had happened in the final few games of the year in the Wildcard round against Baltimore, Jesus Christ, this team was a roller coaster. It was a real roller coaster to talk about. But before we begin, I just want to let you guys know, if you guys enjoy the video or if you're new around here on the channel, please like and subscribe. It would help a lot in helping me continue to grow and spread my football passion to more and more people on the internet. It's free, as you can always change your mind. It only takes a couple of seconds. I would really appreciate it if you guys would do that for me. But let's begin talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where did I have this team in August? Well, I had this team finishing 9-8 and 4th in the AFC North. I had them finishing last and missing the playoffs. So, quite an interesting comparison, because looking back on that record in retrospect, this team looked a lot like a 9-win team. But, I don't know. It's just weird. It was really, really weird. Like, I feel so right about this team, but there's also many things where I feel wrong about this team. It's just, this year was just a roller coaster, like I said. It was just up and down. This is a huge basket case. This team is one of the biggest basket cases in the NFL. I think a lot of people can agree with that. But getting back to the point, why did I have them finishing 9-8? Well, despite that 2024 being the year where Mike Tomlin's win streak season ended, I had this team going 8-9. Before I just had them going 9-8. I don't know when I made that change, but I made it relatively early in the process. And I was like, oh, if 2024 could be the year where Mike Tomlin's winning season streak ends, this could be the year. But at the same time, I concluded that, hey, look, it hasn't happened yet. I'm not going to predict it happen. Let it happen now. It's just when it happens, it happens. But going into what the team looked like and why I really had it going 9-8, the QB situation simply wasn't great. Russell Wilson was set to be the starter, but he had played himself out of a Hall of Fame career in Denver with how bad it was. So he went to Pittsburgh, and I was like, okay, this feels like a bridge. This feels like a, just stabilizing option, I guess. And then they also got Justin Fields. They traded for him, and Justin Fields is coming off his final year in Chicago, where he proved that he can't be a franchise quarterback. I'm just not so sure that this quarterback room was just great. Like, it was better than most people thought it would be, but it just, I just don't know where to feel about it. It just felt really weird to me. But that being said, they also got rid of Kenny Pickett as well. So it was the basket case. Just like the rest of the team, it was just a big basket case. But continuing on, I also did mention that their free agency was small but effective. And that at the time, I really did like their draft class. Didn't really impress all as much now, but going back at the time, I did really like it. They addressed needs that they thought they needed to fill. They drafted Joey Fotanu, the tackle out of Washington. They did draft Roman Wilson out of Michigan, wide receiver. They needed help at wide receiver, so I was like, okay, they're getting players that are talented and needs where they need players, where they're needed, right? I'm kind of stumbling over my words here, but I liked it. I did like the draft. It's just looking back and looking at their team and looking where everywhere else where the AFC North was, I thought that they were just the worst team. And with the quarterback uncertainty, I was just like, eh. And even with the Browns, like, looking back, it doesn't make sense why I had the Browns so high and finishing second in the AFC North. Or no, they finished third below the Bengals, but I had them making the playoffs. Right? Did I have them making the playoffs? I can't remember if I had the Browns making the playoffs. Regardless, I had them better just because I thought, okay, their defense is going to be a top unit again and kind of carry the team. The Steelers, I wasn't so sure if their defense was going to be able to carry this offense or vice versa. So 9-8 felt right to me, and that's where I thought I had them finishing. But what happened? What actually happened with their year? Well, they finished one game ahead of their projection, finishing 10-7. Their offense ranked 23rd. Their defense finished 12th overall. And to me, their three best wins were at Washington. They won 28-27. They beat Baltimore 18-16 at home. It was the first time these two met up. And then they beat Cincinnati at Cincinnati 44-38. I chose these three wins to be the best just because they showed that not only can they go toe-to-toe with the top teams in the NFL, they also showed that they could win in multiple different ways. They could score points. They could play good defense and drag you down. They could do a little bit of both. When this team in the middle of the year was at their best, they could win football games in different ways, and the Mike Tomlin culture and effect was in full swing, and you could see that. And the offense, as the year went on, it started off slow. Russell Wilson was hurt to start the year. Justin Fields started, but you saw flashes of consistency and improvement in Justin Fields. He went 4-2 as their starter. They just played solid complementary football during that time. And then Russell Wilson came back as the starter. And at the time, I thought they should have kept Justin Fields because they were winning with Justin Fields. But they made the move to start with Russell Wilson. It was a big risk at the time. And the next few weeks, it was a big payoff. This offense improved and got better. The defense continued playing really well. And at the time, I thought, hey, look, Pittsburgh, I'm not going to say they're a bona fide Super Bowl contender, but they look like they could really be one if they continue to improve. Like, this was a team that was like, okay, we could actually be seeing a really good Pittsburgh Steelers team this year and really shock some people. But as the year went on, the offense kind of faded down a little bit, but it was still productive and efficient, which is what, I was really looking at for their offense. And then they get to the Ravens game or the Eagles game, they lose it. Okay, tough game, really tough team. The Eagles went to win the Super Bowl, right? And then they faced Baltimore the second time. They were running neck and neck with them, and then Derrick Henry just busted the game open in the second half and completely whittled them down. And then they got whooped by Pittsburgh against Kansas City, and then against Cincinnati in a win they needed to make the playoffs, not to make the playoffs. They had their playoff spot clinched, but it was a tough fought loss. Their offense simply fell apart, and the year was just ended off in the wildcard loss against Baltimore. They really just, the last four games, they literally just fell off a cliff. They just completely fell off a cliff, stumbled their way, and then they lost in what it was one of the worst losses I've seen in Pittsburgh Steelers history, in my opinion. It's kind of a bold take, but I kind of believe it with where they are, with their season, the culture, whatnot. Like, it was a very heartbreaking loss, but before we get into that, let's talk about what went right. Let's talk about what actually caused me to believe the Pittsburgh Steelers in being a contender midway through the year. Well, coaching at this time was prevailing. You look at, despite the doubts, not only were they competing, they were playing really good football all the way around. I mentioned Justin Fields playing decent when Russell Wilson was hurt to start the year, and then Russell Wilson came in and made this offense better. They were running the ball well. They were utilizing their players. George Pickens looked good. Jalen Warren looked good. Najee Harris looked good. Even to a certain extent, Van Jefferson looked good. Mike Williams, who they had traded for, was making like a big play once or twice a game, so they were getting something out of him. So there was stuff to like here. There was stuff to like. And the defense continued to be productive. Outside of finishing 25th against the pass, which was a bad unit, but you have a second-year corner and Joey Porter, who kind of disappointed. Then your second starting corner was Dante Jackson, who's a veteran. So that wasn't great. But they had a top 10 run defense. They were top 13 in everything else, including finishing second on third down, which if you have a good run defense and you're one of the best on third down, that's going to help your defense out a lot and really help your offense get on the field and just produce. So overall, the team was looking good. They were efficient, and the coaching was working as well. And oh my gosh, I just ran myself into a wall. I'm sorry. My throat is also getting dry. But all that being said, it was a typical Mike Tomlin-led team. A team that, while they may not be great on paper, you know what? They're very consistent. They're performing very, very well. And so there was a lot to like. But, as I mentioned, they lost 4 games to end the year. What happened with these last 4 games? What went wrong for Pittsburgh to cause them to fall off so hard and be so disappointing? Well, with the secondary struggles continuing, the defensive line started to struggle. In the last 4 games, they allowed 27 points a game, and they also allowed over 120 rushing yards a game, which was their strong side of their defense. But of course, the losses, the yards per game was inflated by the Philly loss and the Baltimore loss. They only allowed like less than 100 yards against Pittsburgh or against Kansas City and against Cincinnati, but that was just marked the beginning of the end of their side of that side of the ball. And then offensively, they just fell apart. They no longer could run the football. Russell Wilson started making more mistakes, fumbling the ball, turning the ball over, making really bad interceptions, especially against Baltimore. His interceptions were just awful, very, very awful throws, one of them being in the red zone, which cost him points. And then the offensive line was just not very good. While the interior individually, they weren't bad, the tackles left a lot to be desired. Troy Fautanu was a rookie and had his fair share of struggles, and they started him at right tackle, even though he played left tackle, and then they moved Broderick Jones to left tackle for some reason, and he just struggled a lot. He was probably the worst offensive lineman on the team and looks like a bust, which is unfortunate because he went in the middle of the first round last year, so maybe they continue to develop and maybe he can improve. But the tackles left a lot to be desired, which really didn't help. All that being said, the big thing that really held this team back and what the big number one contributing factor was this team, with how they were structured, lived and died by the run game. You talk about how good they were running the football and stopping the run, but their passing game and pass defense simply were just not good enough overall this year. They had moments where they were good, but collectively, it just was not a good enough performance. And when you're a team that lives and dies by the run game, you are going to struggle winning games when it really matters most. We've seen this with a lot of teams over the years, and it has not fared out well. There's a difference between being able to run the ball and living by the run. You look at Philly and Baltimore, right? They live by the run, but they have enough talent on both sides of the ball where they don't have to die by the run. Where at Pittsburgh, that's where their strong suit was, and in the passing game and pass defense, simply they did not have the talent to complement running the ball and stopping the run. So they lived and died by it, and that's what really contributed to all the issues of their team in their final 4 games, losing and then going into the playoffs in that loss. And another thing too was that this team could not finish games. They fell apart in the second half. They struggled to stay competitive, and that's because when you cannot run the ball and stop the run, if that's all you live by and you have to change, you can adapt and the team falls apart. And that's exactly what happened. So finishing off with all that tirade, what can the Steelers do to actually get better here? Well, we'll start with the big 3. The number one need for Pittsburgh is quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do. It seems like they're going to bring back Justin Fields, which if you want to bring back Justin Fields, I'm open to it. Mostly because where Pittsburgh is picking in the draft and the free agency quarterback class not being good at all outside of Sam Darnold, and even then that's not great. What do you really do? Do you stick with Justin Fields and try and get younger there, or do you bring back Russell Wilson and let a veteran guy kind of just hold the fort down, and then maybe you draft a quarterback? I could see them doing that, honestly, because of how big the need is. It's just tough. It's just really tough. I could see them drafting a guy like Jackson Dart and taking a flyer on him in the second. That's a good spot for Jackson Dart to probably go. It's just a matter of, can they actually develop a young quarterback? Because they haven't been able to find that franchise guy since Ben Roethlisberger left. And honestly, when Ben Roethlisberger was on the tail end of his career, they should have got a guy then to develop him, let him sit properly. And so by the time Ben was ready to go, they would have had a quarterback situation in place. But no, they drafted Kenny Pickett after Ben retired and then started him right away, and he just was not ready for the moment. So I don't know what the Pittsburgh Steelers do with that situation. Maybe it looks like they're more than likely going to try and go with Justin Fields in 2025, which, okay, that works. It's a fit for him. So I'll keep a slight open mind to see how it will do, but I'm not very high on it being a good move. The next one is DB. Obviously, their defensive backs were not good this year. Dante Jackson's a veteran. I think he's going to be a free agent too. So I think probably they go DB in the first round. I don't think they're going to be in the running to pick Tyler Booker or Armand Membo, the interior offensive lineman. And they don't really need an interior offensive lineman. I think they can roll with the same 3 guys in 2025. If none of them are a free agent, one of them might be. I'm not 100% sure on that. But also, you have a first-round pick in Broderick Jones going into year 3, and then a first-round pick in Troy Fautanu going into year 2. So you can't spend another first-round pick on an offensive lineman. It's not going to work. So you kind of just have to stick with it and hope it improves. So DB is where, going back to DB, I think that's where they go with their first round pick. But also their third biggest need is wide receiver, which also has a solid case to go. I've seen some people mock Matthew Golden out of Texas to go there, or Mika Egbuka, right? Those are some guys that are available. Luther Burden is another guy as well at the tail end of the first round. They need wide receiver. George Pickens is good, but that's all they really have. Van Jefferson is like a wide receiver 3. Mike Williams, he's gone. He did nothing for Pittsburgh in retrospect. And then third round pick Roman Wilson, he's hurt. He's a smaller guy, so I don't know how much of a contributor he can be. So getting a wide receiver and drafting one is really important for Pittsburgh. They need another young guy there to go with George Pickens and help improve the passing game so they don't have to live and die by their running game. So there's some other needs there as well. They could use another linebacker. Patrick Queen was disappointing, and they could use another defensive lineman, but that's really more for depth purposes, in my opinion, right now at this stage of the Pittsburgh Steelers and where they're at in their timeline. But to wrap it all up, ultimately, the playoff loss in Baltimore really left a bad taste in my mouth, as it did with a lot of people. And right now, the Steelers, they are officially in limbo. They are not good enough to compete for a Super Bowl, and they're not bad enough to get a franchise-altering player at the top of the draft. And it stinks because they're constantly in the playoffs. So how can that be in limbo? Well, it's because every year the Pittsburgh Steelers start good, start hot, they end up finishing really, really cold, and then stumble their way into the playoffs and lose in the wildcard round. It happens every single year now for the past 6 years. So what do we do here? Where do we go from here? Because with Mike Tomlin, the only way to go is up. They're not going to be bad, but how high can they actually go? I'm not sure on that. This team is going to be in a playoff contender again. I firmly believe that. But at the same time, if there's any year for Mike Tomlin to finally, not finish with the winning record or take a big step back, 2025 really feels like that's the year. I'm not going to predict it. I'm not going to bet on it quite yet, but it's definitely like that time where it's a real possibility. It is a real possibility. And at the same time, my confidence in Mike Tomlin is at an all-time low, because you don't want to be in a situation where you have to realistically think about what life could be without Mike Tomlin. But this organization could be closer to that reality than they probably realize. And so what do? You fire a good coach, but that could either, you get the next head coach, that could either help your franchise, but also it's more likely, realistically speaking, to blow up in your face and set the Pittsburgh Steelers down into the basement of the AFC North competing with the Browns. So it's a very tough situation to be in. I don't know how they're gonna look in 2025. I expect them to be a playoff contender, but does that mean they make the playoffs finishing with double-digit wins, or they finish 9-8 or 8-9 and just miss the playoffs? So I have no idea where they're gonna end up. They're going to be a very interesting team to follow, considering the basket case that they were in 2024. But it's going to be a very interesting year for Pittsburgh. And if things don't go how they need to go and improve, I think Pittsburgh's going to let go of Mike Tomlin, and that's going to be a very interesting situation to talk about. But that's a situation we're going to talk about another day, because that's further along down the line. But with all that being said, that is going to do it for me today, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you guys did enjoy, please hit the like button, subscribe button. It helps the channel out tremendously and really helps me grow my channel and spreading my football passion to more and more people on the platform. So I really would appreciate it if you guys would do that for me. Also, make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Pittsburgh Steelers fans, who do you want to draft in the first round? Who do you want the Steelers to go with at quarterback? Where do you think the Steelers will end up? Do you think Mike Tomlin finally has a losing season in 2025? I want to hear all your thoughts about those topics and many more. Also, make sure to share the video, getting everybody locked on to the Shumake Take podcast, whether it's by spreading the show by word of mouth or social media. I have great content coming out for you guys every single week, talking about predictions versus reality. And then we got news coming out as well on Wednesday. So if you guys this is probably going to come out with that news video, so I recommend go checking it out afterward. But that is going to do it for me today, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed, and I will see you all next time.